Hey there, and welcome to Daytona, Florida. We finished the flamingo the other day, and we're ready to start working on another painting. Um, I decided that I must have an aquatic birds theme going on. We're going to move on to a blue heron, which I'm going to talk to you about. And first thing I'll do is switch over to the other camera so you can see what's going on. So here we have the drawing. I've made the bird a little bit thinner and a little bit longer than in the photograph. It just felt right. It felt a little squat in the photograph. My wife actually pointed that out to me when I sent her the original of the drawing. I have shaded in a little bit in pencil, which you don't normally see me do when I'm going to watercolor, but that's these darker blue areas. So it shouldn't show up too much. We'll have to see. I don't mind seeing pencil lines sometimes in my watercolor, so that should be just fine. We're gonna start really loose. This is gonna be hard for anyone who couldn't paint outside the lines in their coloring books as a kid. I'm not gonna worry about these border lines. I want to actually get out here because I've got these tendrils that will negative paint in the darker watercolor for the background around them, so I want them to have the same color as the heron does. The heron has these beautiful rust colors and these bluish grays and these reddish grays. These are some really nice colors. We're going to put them in first, wet to wet, pretty light, and let that dry before we move on to anything else. So with that, let's mix up a little color. First up, I'm going to make up a little bit of my transparent orange that I like. I've got that in my palette. And let's get a little bit of ultramarine blue, which is a reddish blue. It's on the warmer side of blue, heading towards the reds and the purples. And I don't need this to be too dark because we're not painting the dark bits now. We're going to work on this in stages, light to dark. We're going to try and follow my way I've tried to teach you over the months we were together. And then I've added a phthalo blue, which is a cooler blue, more of a pure blue, so that I can put those together. And I think what I'm going to do is wet the whole bird and the areas around the bird first and drop in our color. Let it mingle around the cool into the warm, a little bit darker and lighter, and we'll go from there. And then once that dries, we'll come in and we'll put in the yellow in the beak. And we'll do the yellow of the eye and some of the darker oranges and the dark blues. We'll finish the bird completely before we move on to the background. Okay. You know what? I'm going to activate a little bit of purple too because, well, just because. So let's get in here with a clean brush. And you can see I am not staying in the lines. It's okay. As our old friend Bob Ross would say, it's just a happy accident. Okay. Now we don't have to go too far out past the bird, so I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to wet the whole page, but the bird's got some water on it, which will help us get that wet into wet look. And now I'm coming in right now and dropping in a little blue, a little purple, and again, the shade. This is the lighter areas, and they're gonna dry much lighter than what we're looking at right now, especially with how much water we have in there. And I'm also going to grab some red, and we can do this and this. And like I said, we'd be running this out here because we're going to paint it back in darkly for the background. We don't have to be worried about staying in the lines. He's got some orange up here where his leg meets, and again a little bit here, a little bit in the feathers as it goes down, a little bit up here in the shoulder. And it's almost pure white up here at the top of the beak and the yellow. So I'm actually gonna pull some of this out. And as you can see, I'm able to pull out the color with a damp brush. That's because this is that hominule paper that I used once before. It's okay to leave some patches where you don't cover it with paint. Those rough edges work out really nicely. I'm just gonna grab this, and there's a little bit of dark that happens here that I can throw in now. I don't have to be too fussy with it, and it goes into the reflection. And we'll make the reflection by painting backwards, painting the painting negatively the shapes to wiggle them to give it a little bit of a feel of a reflection. Let's see now. This area here is on the dark side, and there's a thing that happens here. All of this is going to continue to be melty. It's not gonna stay in one place. And we will balance out this soft wet look by doing some very fine work on the back end. That's it for now. We don't want to go too far. We don't want to mess with it. If I did more now, I would only be making a mess of things later. I think we're going to let this sit. So there we are. We are in really good shape at this point. It's going to have to dry for a while. I like this to be completely dry before we start moving on. All of the wet into wet is done for now. We may do some wet into wet with the darker bits and some dry brush at the same time. We'll move to a smaller brush for the dark bits on the bird, and then when we get to the background, we're going to swing around and come back to larger brushes again, going to smaller for the details in the background. But that's it for now.